The ancient Greeks knew that you could not separate the mind and the body. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. This is something that it seems like in the modern world we have oftentimes lost sight of, and yet this old wisdom it comes true the more that we research it, the more that we realize these people knew what they were talking about. But go back to Plato, go back to Aristotle, and again, you used to see all this talk about the importance of fitness by these great thinkers of having a strong, fit body, right? Just for overall health, for the way that it translated to your mental focus, plus of the aesthetically pleasing aspects of it, right? This was understood. This was understood, and they knew there was a connection between all of this. Yet we fast forward then to the modern world, and you will see so many people who they try to separate intellectualism from physical fitness, which is absolutely ludicrous. Now, to some extent, this is because oftentimes, say, weightlifting, and to some extent, some sports have been seen as the domain of people who were not necessarily great thinkers. There are stereotypes that have been built around this, but the reality is it's simply not true. Like when you start getting into a lot of sports and strength sports and powerlifting and bodybuilding, you start finding there are plenty of intellectuals and medical doctors and PhDs and all these people who compete. But what people have lost sight of is that those people always make up a small segment of the population, so they're always going to make up a small segment of people pursuing these other things. Also because historically, let's say certain sports, right? People who were really chasing a football scholarship maybe didn't have these other options, so they focused on that because they weren't the person who was going to go to medical school. Okay? So we've made this disconnect as a society, right? We've made this disconnect. The reality, we are realizing more and more, literally being obese will affect your cognition, things like that. Being physically weak will affect memory and cognition with age. So these are big ones, right? Because what do we find? Poor insulin sensitivity, high blood pressure, all these different things that happen with poor fitness, poor health, poor diet affect the brain. They affect memory, they affect cognition, they affect even mental health, right? How often do we look at some of the data and we find that mental health issues are tremendously exacerbated by being sedentary, or they're tremendously exacerbated by a bad diet? And it makes sense when we look at the effect that our diet has on brain chemistry and neurotransmitters, dopamine, serotonin, all these different things. Literally, a bad diet, dietary deficiencies, dietary imbalances can actually cause depression. Now, am I saying it's the only factor? No. But it is there. And we know this is documented. It is seen. Like it is seen in the research. And we know the various pathways. Hey, if this hormone in the body or this vitamin or this mineral gets deficient, what happens? Depression goes up. Anxiety goes up. Or in other cases, we see memory loss. We see cognitive loss. All right, it's the same thing when we look at strength, physical strength. With age, oh, absolutely. Right? Absolutely occurs. We see loss of cognition, loss of memory tied to this. Being physically strong as we get older keeps our brain healthier. And it makes sense because, again, we think about the neural pathways involved. Like, think of the neural pathways involved with training. Right? So you have those things to factor in, but then we also have the health aspects of how does it affect the chemistry of our body. Well, our brain is affected by this. It's absolutely affected. Then we come over to fitness and other stuff. We come over to the ability to function. If we're obese, we're most likely insulin insensitive, right? They're almost inseparable at a certain point. Okay? And that is extremely clear. All right, well, insulin sensitivity affects mood, it affects memory, it affects intellect. Now, is it the primary factor? No, obviously not. But it affects it. Absolutely affects it. It will absolutely affect your motivation as well. And we get into stuff like the inflammation part. I mean, when we talk about inflammation in the body, what is the single worst thing we can do for inflammation? To be obese, to have too much body fat. This is really not even a point of debate anymore. Body fat itself causes inflammation, and the more of it you have, the more your inflammation goes up. That affects your brain, affects your heart, everything. But again, we get into that, and it's going to affect your mood, it's going to affect your energy, it's going to affect your productivity. So, when people have these stereotypes, and people say, that's a bad stereotype, but it's a true stereotype. It is literally physically the case. It'll be like, what do you mean that a person who is obese is going to potentially be lazy or all these other things? Of course they will. And it's not because they're prone to obesity. It's not their genes causing it. It's not their personality. It's the physical effects on the body. That all that insulin uncontrolled, the poor blood sugar control that comes with it as a side effect of the body fat, the extra inflammation in the body that it creates will affect your brain. So it's not the person that's the issue. It's the biological situation that's been created inside their spacesuit, if you want to call it that, where the brain resides. You've created an unhealthy environment. The brain will suffer because of the hormonal cascade, the effects on its fuel sources, everything, right? And that will even affect the brain's insulin sensitivity, the way it absorbs nutrients over time, over long-term exposure. So yes, your brain is literally affected by being sedentary, poor health, body fat, all these things. It is directly impacted. So when we say that we cannot separate fitness, physical fitness with mental fitness, they go hand in hand. In the same token, poor mental health will in turn contribute to poor physical health, right? They cannot be separated. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.